Chinese leader Xi Jinping left Moscow this morning, wrapping up a closely watched visit. Yesterday, Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks on the war in Ukraine, but they did not present any concrete steps to end the conflict. A statement from Russia and China appears to suggest Western powers were an obstacle to peace, calling for the need to respect legitimate security concerns of all countries. CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio is following the latest.
Choreographed pageantry for the world to see. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin issuing their joint statement on Ukraine. China remains impartial, said Xi, on the side of peace and right side of history. China's plan could form a basis for a settlement, said Putin, but the West and Kyiv are not ready. That plan from February has been derided by the West. China has not demanded Russia's military to withdraw. In Moscow, Xi and Putin agreed an end to the war should be settled through dialogue, yet gave neither a framework nor detail. After their state dinner, Xi told Putin they are driving changes not seen for 100 years. But with no known decisive deals on trade, energy, or Chinese weapons, China's leader was off. Washington says Putin has already blown through resources in the past year.
Ammunition and missiles, the tanks and aircraft he's lost, and absolutely the soldiers that he has literally thrown into a meat grinder.
As the world powers talked around Ukraine, within the war-torn country, President Vladimir Zelensky paid his respects to fallen soldiers, while Ukrainians bear the brunt of daily Russian shelling. We ask God to save the city for fewer deaths, says Lilia. It's very scary because people die every day just going about their business.
Or after going to sleep, just fresh overnight, 3 more people died here around the capital region of Kyiv. That's because of fresh Russian strikes. And Henry, we heard the air sirens ourselves. The alerts went off just after midnight, waking up to the news, just more tragedy upon tragedy every day.
It's just heartbreaking, Ramy. In regard to this meeting with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, obviously Xi Jinping was sort of approaching it with a stronger hand, if you will, than Putin. This is 3 days, a state dinner. We heard about sort of vague agreements when it comes to economic cooperation and deepening their partnership, but I don't think anything concrete. What exactly did Putin get out of this?
Yeah, optics-wise, Putin did get what he wanted. We saw the pomp. We saw the ceremony. We saw both of these global leaders walk down very long carpets, prolonged to make sure that the world saw that they were meeting to have a kind of united front, if you will, in the face of what they're seeing as U.S. global influence. But in terms of substance, there wasn't very much on the table or anything that Mr. Putin or Mr. Xi, for that matter, talked about. Mr. Putin wanted deals, agreements in energy and in trade. In energy specifically, there was a pipeline project that has been in the works for years, but we didn't get any substantive breakthrough whether that happened. It's called the Power of Siberia 2, which would get gas from Siberia to northwest China. Another issue is with trade. Almost nothing to speak of there, but when you look at who needs who, Russia before the war was the 11th biggest economy. China has been the world's #2 economy for years. So after the war started, we know that many Western companies left, and Mr. Putin had said to Mr. Xi, listen, we welcome Chinese investment. And of course he does, because he needs Chinese investment, any kind of investment really, to fill the hole that Western companies left. So to wrap it up, visuals, yes, but substance, not very much at all.
Not very much. You know what else they need? They need tanks. Reporting is they are losing more tanks than they can, build. And who is getting tanks? Well, the U.S. is delivering M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. They're expected to arrive by the fall. That is sooner than previously thought. As we've seen before, Ramy, every time there is sort of a new influx of heavy equipment, the war changes. The nature of the war changes somewhat. What does this mean that Ukraine is getting tanks?
Sure. This sounds like good news, and in terms of materiel, it is, right? When you get tanks earlier that you're asking for. But earlier this year, the Pentagon said that they were going to be sending M1 tanks, but the A2 variant. Those are the more modern ones. They have digital targeting, but the problem there is that they take longer to build or to refurbish from older tanks. So now the Pentagon is saying that they will be sending out M1A1 tanks. This is the older version. They are still necessary, they're still needed. Ukraine is welcoming them, but this is something that is just trying to meet the demands, as you were talking about, in terms of trying to push back Russian forces, Russian shelling, to hold that line. About the M1A2 tanks, by the way, the Pentagon says that they are still on the table, very much so, that they just take longer to get into production, to get here to Ukraine. 31 are still on the table, and that constitutes an entire Ukrainian battalion.
Wow. All right, Ramy, thank you very much.